Welcome to this interview series. My name is Christina Theodoraki. I'm editor of Small Business Economics and Entrepreneurship Journal, and I have the great honor to interview today Ben Spigel from the University of Edinburgh Business School in UK. So welcome, Ben, and thank you very much for joining us for this interview series.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be chatting with you.
Ben is going to give us more insights on his article published in Open Access in Small Business Economics in January 2022, entitled Examining the Cohesiveness and Nestedness Entrepreneurial Ecosystem, Evidence from British FinTechs. So starting my first question, I would like to ask you, Ben, can you tell us more about your article? What is your article about?
Definitely. So the big thing this article is about is this, what seems like a really simple and kind of inconsequential question. Are entrepreneurial ecosystems, which are sort of the actors and factors of a place that drive forward high growth entrepreneurship, are ecosystems about all the different entrepreneurs in a region, or is it about specific industries? And so like I said, this seems like a kind of stupid, really small question, but I argue it gets to the heart of what ecosystems are. Are they about industry knowledge, really specialized knowledge that is sort of shared between people and drives forward new innovation and new product development? Or is it about sort of these entrepreneurial skills, about overcoming the challenges of growth that could really apply to any kind of industry? So basically, it's looking at this question, are they cohesive? So is it sharing all the different kinds of entrepreneurs throughout a place? Or is it nested? Do we have multiple smaller kind of sub-ecosystems within a region, all doing their own thing? And so as the title suggests, I'm looking at 4 fintech ecosystems in the UK. So this is the City of London, which is the big financial center in the center of London, the Square Mile. East London, Shoreditch, which is kind of the cool tech place in London, right next door, actually. And then I'm looking at the 2 biggest fintech centers outside of London. So there's Leeds, and then my hometown of Edinburgh. And so what I did was essentially I stalked everyone on LinkedIn. That is my sort of the methodological innovation I did in this paper, was just getting the background info on every single founder of fintech firms in those ecosystems. So in total, it's about 360 of them. And basically, there's a lot of time to spend of me on the couch going through LinkedIn, cleaning the data. And really, we're trying to figure out, are these finance people looking at their career history, their jobs, their education? Are these finance people? Are these tech people? Are they techies? Are they ninjas? Are they hackers? Are they something else? Are they consultants? Are they managers? Or are they sort of something completely different? And so myself and a team of really overworked research assistants went through every single person, so thousands and thousands of people, and coded them individually. All basically 2TA, we had different votes, and we sort of made sure that there was a nice non-biased way of assigning these people. And what we found was kind of interesting, that there's not a lot of fintech overlap. Finance people and tech people kind of keep apart. The glue that brought them together and actually ended up being the most common background of a fintech founder was a boring old manager. Like not a cool tech guy, not a finance whiz, but just a marketing manager or a consultant or sort of an executive. But they were the ones who sort of were the founding engine for a lot of these businesses. And so what that tells us is that, one, we are seeing some nestedness. There isn't a lot of overlap between the finance communities and the tech communities. They tend to do their own things. There's a lot of firms created by 1 or 2 tech people, 1 or 2 finance people who go on and hire the expertise they need. But really, it was that role of managers that surprised me. It was the most surprising finding from this, is that, heck, they still matter, and that they're really important in the ecosystem of dragging these 2 communities together where they can. So that's really the core of the article. Like, I'm arguing that ecosystems are nested, which actually is different than what I thought going in. I've always been a big proponent of this cohesive idea, and the data said differently, so I had to change my conclusions.
Great. Can you tell us why this article is so important and what brings new in the literature, that a new idea that we didn't know before?
So again, if you're one of the 30 people in the world who are really into ecosystems, it's that cohesiveness thing. So that's for a very small community. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that the article has bigger implications than that. For me, the most important thing really was that role of people with what I call sort of generic entrepreneurial knowledge. And for me, as someone in a business school, that is actually a bit heartening that what I do matters, that the people I teach are going to go on to be entrepreneurs. You don't need to be a finance person. You don't need to be a tech person. The entrepreneurial skills are what matters. And this is actually contributing to a big stream of research coming out that's looking at the competencies of entrepreneurs and what they're actually good at. And again, it's not the jack of all trades, but it is that there's a few specific entrepreneurial skills of empathy, open-mindedness, leadership, vision, and again, being able to get resources beyond what you currently control, that core definition of entrepreneurship, that matter. And so being able to identify those types of people is really important to sort of understand what are the untapped resources regions have to really promote high growth entrepreneurship. And in some ways, it's pushing back against this thing of this maybe obsession with STEM, that we all need to be STEM lords and we all need to be data hackers and data scientists. That stuff matters, and you obviously need those skills to build a high growth company. But we also need to be focusing on these entrepreneurial skills, those mindsets, the ability to build something that isn't there yet, and to see a need that hasn't been solved in the market yet. And again, what the data showed was that you can bring that talent in once you have the idea, once you get some support for it. You can bring in the programmers, you can bring in the people with that core finance knowledge and core finance networks. But those entrepreneurial skills are really, really important. And I think that's going to be a direction of future research, is trying to understand, how do we identify these skills and really showing that they matter.
Great. Can you tell us, do you remember what was the very specific point that emerged this idea? How did this idea came from? Or how you got inspired?
So these are actually questions I've been asking since my PhD dissertation. I'm an economic geographer, and so I'm really versed in the lore of clusters. And again, there's these different perspectives and clusters that, again, in some ways go back to the 1920s with Alfred Marshall talking about knife manufacturing and why Manchester is a great place to make a knife because you have so many different competitors and they're all pushing each other. Then he had Jane Jacobs in the 1960s talking about the overlap and how you couldn't have made the bra without the fashion industry being right next to the metal industry in New York City. And so these are different perspectives about what drives productivity and what drives regional innovation. Is it specialization or is it overlap between very different industries? So that's a core question that's always been on my mind. And so when I was tackling it, I actually turned to sort of some expertise I developed in a previous paper of using LinkedIn as a data source. And I think this is a great source of data. It's difficult and it's fraught with challenges. But in a previous paper, I used this data with a colleague, Tara Vinodry, to look at what happened when BlackBerry collapsed, the company BlackBerry. We all used to have them, now we don't, and the company's basically collapsed. And I wanted to see what happened to all the really, really smart people that they attracted to this one Canadian city. Did they stay? Did they go? What happened? Did they become entrepreneurs? And so we used a similar approach of stalking people on LinkedIn and looking at their background and saying, where are you now? Can we figure it out? But with this, I really refined the method. And for me, it was about getting rid of my own biases and making sure that I'm not judging people based on just what I feel, but really creating a coherent, repeatable methodology that other researchers can use to identify, again, the backgrounds. Is it finance? Is it tech? Is it management? Is it other? So again, that's why I had basically this team of RAs going through looking at people, looking at employers, trying to decide what they are, which can be very, very tricky based on the data that's provided. And so that's why we use the human element rather than trying to do machine learning or AI, because there is such challenging, it's really hard to figure out, is this finance or is this tech? Because they're becoming so similar now. So you really need that eye. So for me, that was the big push forward, was combining this research interest I've had for 10 years with these new methodological tools that I and my colleagues have been working on.
Thank you very much. And you have been sharing with us so many ideas about the future directions and some hot topics about mindset, about artificial intelligence, and so on. So I wanted to ask this question about the future research agenda and where do you see the research on this topic going forward? What are your new ideas that you're working on, or things that you will be interested in the future?
Definitely. So again, for me, it's really about moving from structure to process. So this is kind of a very structural paper. It's looking at the structure of ecosystems. Are they nested? Are they cohesive? And so that's been a really fruitful area of inquiry for me for 10 years. I built my career on that. But right now, I'm really trying to push on to how ecosystems actually work. So I'm really interested in how entrepreneurs learn from each other. Again, this idea of generic entrepreneurial knowledge. Basically, what I've learned from this research, from my interviews I've been doing with entrepreneurs, from observing things, is that there's no new problems. Every problem an entrepreneur encounters has been encountered a million times before by someone else. There's nothing new under the sun. But how entrepreneurs learn how to solve these common problems, for me, that's one of the driving forces about why ecosystems matter. That people can see the problems they're going to face, learn how others have solved them, and start coming up with solutions before they encounter the problem. Just to give you an example, I really see this in my own data, and I think we all see this in our lives. It's hard to fire people. When I interview entrepreneurs, that is one of the biggest challenges they face is how do you fire your first person? And everyone, to every single person I talk to, thinks they're uniquely bad at it. And they suffer and they think they failed because they hired the wrong person or they couldn't motivate them and they're afraid that person is going to be destitute if they do fire them, so they keep them on longer. It costs them money. There's a whole lot of damage to the company. However, once they start talking to each other, they realize they all encounter this and they all feel the same way and no one's good at it. And that helps them push over that barrier and say, okay, this person is not working out. I'm doing more damage to myself and more damage to them by keeping them on and having a bad environment. If I just let them go, they'll find another job. Again, the unemployment rate is like 2% now for tech workers. They're going to find something by lunchtime, and you'll be freed up to again pursue that opportunity. And so by talking to each other, they're able to overcome problems that again, books, you could read a book on this, but you wouldn't learn that just by talking to someone else, hearing their story, getting to talk with them. That matters. So that's the kind of work I'm doing right now, is really trying to delve in to how entrepreneurs use their ecosystems and how that actually helps firms grow and thrive.
Great. Actually, this is my next question about how we can apply your findings. So you share with us some examples. Do you have any advices or insights for practitioners what they can prioritize from your findings?
Definitely. So I think from these findings, if you're a practitioner, the big thing is to look beyond programmers or finance people. If you're talking about fintech, talk to the managers. These are actually the future entrepreneurs from the data. Again, if you sort of look at some of the figures here, more than half the founders ended up having very sort of pure management backgrounds. They were not programmers. They were not investment managers. They were marketing executives. They were sort of CEO, chief of operations. They were, again, consultants. These are actually some of the most important entrepreneurs, but they often get left out because they're not sexy. But they do the boring stuff really, really well. And the boring stuff is what makes firms succeed. So in some ways, I think this paper is kind of a plea to avoid the shiny stuff and look at what actually makes businesses work. And that, thankfully, is managerial know-how.
Great. Thank you very much, Ben. I don't know if you have any last comments for our readers that are going to read your paper.
I would just say, again, read it with this idea of, what actually makes ecosystems work. Why are they important? And again, it's that knowledge that matters. It's knowledge. It's not about policy support. It's not about, the venture capital. It's about ideas and knowledge and knowing how to build a business. That's what matters.
Great. Thank you very much for the inspiring discussion, for the very insightful research. I also encourage our readers to download your paper because it is on open access, so they can freely download it from the Spigel website. So I wish you a great day.
Thank you very much.